What if the character in Breaking Bad who screams, threatens, or fires the opening shot isn't the most terrifying? What if the man who never speaks up is the scariest? Gus Fring does not shout, he does not boast, he does not chase attention, and that is exactly why he is terrifying.
We may be here a while. Get out!
The danger of Gus Fring does not come from rage. It comes from control. Today we are not talking about how powerful Gus Fring is. We are talking about why his calmness is more frightening than violence, why his silence creates more fear than chaos, and why Gus Fring represents the most dangerous kind of villain. Because the scariest thing about Gus Fring is not what he does, it is how he thinks. The first time Walter White truly meets Gus Fring at Los Pollos, Hermanos, nothing feels threatening. Gus is polite, organized, professional. He talks about food, about standards, about responsibility. This is not how criminals usually behave. This is how leaders behave. And that is the first warning sign Gus Fring does not look like a criminal, because he does not see himself as one. He sees himself as order. Most characters in Breaking Bad act on emotion. Tuco is chaos, Jesse is guilt, Walter is pride, Gus is something else, Gus is patience. He never reacts immediately. He absorbs information. He waits. He calculates.
Hey, Vamos, muchachos.
Salud.
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 When Gus tells Walter that fear is not an effective motivator, he is not saying fear is useless, he is saying fear is inefficient. Fear creates instability. Instability creates mistakes. Mistakes damage systems. And Gus Fring lives by systems. Everything about him is symmetrical. His restaurants, his schedules, his routines, his expectations, even his emotions are controlled. Balanced, measured Gus Fring is not calm by nature. He is calm by design, and this is where he becomes terrifying. Gus has removed impulse from his behavior. Most violence in Breaking Bad is emotional arguments, betrayals, breaking points. But Gus Fring never breaks. Every act of violence he commits was decided long before it happened. The murder of Victor is the clearest example. The box cutter scene is disturbing not because of blood, but because of Gus' behavior. He does not yell, he does not threaten, he prepares, he acts, he cleans. Victor was not punished for being seen, he was removed for disrupting order. In that moment, Victor was not a person, he was a malfunction, and Gus fixed it. That is the pattern. Gus Fring does not kill out of anger, he kills out of necessity, which makes him far more dangerous than Walter White. Walter kills when his ego is threatened, when he feels disrespected, when he wants to feel powerful. Gus kills when the system requires it, and systems do not feel guilt. Another terrifying aspect of Gus Fring is his long-term vision. This is a man who spent decades planning revenge. Decades. The death of Max was not something Gus reacted to. It was something he integrated into his life. Every business, every connection, every expansion, all of it existed for one purpose: to dismantle the Salamanca family completely. Slowly, methodically. Most people cannot hold a grudge for a year. Gus built an empire for one, and he never allowed emotion to rush the process. That level of patience is frightening. It tells us Gus Fring is willing to live an entire life for a single goal, without pleasure, without hesitation. Gus Fring also understands people better than they understand themselves. He saw through Walter White from the beginning. He knew Walt was unstable, driven by pride, unable to accept being second. That is why Gus never truly trusted him. Even when Walt was useful, even when Walt was profitable, Gus was already planning his replacement. That is another terrifying trait. Gus plans for your death while smiling at you, and he does it without hatred. In fact, Gus Fring would have lived peacefully forever if Walter had followed instructions, if Walter had accepted his role. Gus did not want chaos. He wanted stability. Walter wanted recognition. That conflict made violence inevitable. Another deeply unsettling detail about Gus Fring is his presence. When Gus enters a room, everything changes, not because he demands attention, but because his silence commands it. In the laboratory scenes, there is no dramatic music, no shouting, just machinery, breathing footsteps. Gus does not need threats. His presence creates discipline. That is not fear-based leadership, that is psychological dominance. There is a hidden pattern in Gus' world. He removes individuality, uniforms, identical routines, strict silence. People are interchangeable. If one fails, another replaces them. Walter hates this because Walter needs to feel irreplaceable. Gus designs systems where no one is. That makes killing easy. Because when people are replaceable, life loses emotional weight. This is also why Gus never forms real friendships. Even his closest associates are kept at a distance. Emotion creates vulnerability, and vulnerability disrupts order. Gus refuses both. Now consider Gus' relationship with Hector Salamanca. This is where Gus reveals his most disturbing side. He does not want Hector dead. He wants Hector aware. Aware that his family is gone. Aware that his bloodline is erased. Aware that Gus Fring won, and Gus visits him again and again for years. Not to threaten, not to insult, but to remind. This is not rage. This is psychological torturing. Gus understands suffering and chooses to deliver it slowly. That level of cruelty requires control. Another overlooked truth. Gus Fring does not enjoy violence, but he does find satisfaction in order. Removing a threat improves the system. Murder becomes maintenance. And when violence becomes routine, morality disappears. Jesse is destroyed by guilt. Walter is haunted by ego. Gus moved beyond both. That is why he can fund hospitals, support charities, and still order executions. In his mind, these actions do not conflict. Good and evil are irrelevant. Only structure matters. And here is a detail that makes Gus Fring even more terrifying. Gus Fring prepares for every possible outcome. When he walks into a room, he already knows how it might end. He plans escape routes, he plans replacements, he plans retaliation. Nothing is left to chance. This constant preparation means Gus is never surprised, and a man who cannot be surprised cannot be controlled. This is why Walt's struggle against Gus feels hopeless. Walt improvises, Gus anticipates, Walt reacts, Gus predicts. That difference makes Gus feel unstoppable. And even when Gus finally dies, look at how he faces death. He adjusts his tie. That moment is not bravery, it is conditioning. Even after catastrophic damage, Gus instinctively restores order. Appearance matters. Control matters. Fear no longer exists. And that leads us to the most chilling realization of all. Gus Fring believes he is right, not justified, not misunderstood. Right. He believes the world works best under discipline, under rules, under silence. Anyone who disrupts that becomes a threat. This belief is what makes him truly dangerous, because when evil believes it is order, it stops questioning itself. Gus Fring stops being a criminal and becomes an ideology. Even after his death, his influence remains. The lab, the network, the consequences, his absence creates chaos, because Gus Fring was the balance. A cold, terrifying balance. When that balance is destroyed, the world of Breaking Bad collapses into pure ego and destruction, and that brings us back to the title. The scariest thing about Gus Fring is not his intelligence, not his money, not even his cruelty. It is that a man like him could exist quietly, build an empire patiently and truly believe he was making the world better. Because villains who know they are villains are easy to spot, but villains who believe they are necessary, those are the most dangerous of all.